units to 211 armored car at Blakely and Howard. Suspects last seen heading north on Blakely. Repeat, north on Blakely, riding motorcycles. One orange and one yellow. All units respond.
Hit it.
Motorcycles, one orange, one yellow. All units respond.
4 boy, 111, in pursuit of 2 motorcycles. Believe suspects in 211. 4 boy, 111, suspects west on Strand.
Southwest on Lambeau. All units respond.
There he is. Are you all right?
Yeah, fine. I had that guy, you know that? I had him cold.
We didn't have a bad shot either till you bashed into us.
Me into you?
Well, we weren't moving.
He turned left going southeast on Brody. No, there's no chance. That's it, 10-4.
Yeah, but you were blocking the whole street.
Sure, trying to get the suspect.
Did anyone ever tell you that the man in pursuit has priority?
We didn't see you.
Well, all you had to do was look, Inspector.
Lieutenant.
Well, anyway, you made me lose him.
Why don't you drop it? You knew other cars would be involved. They'd give you a radio. Why don't you use it?
At 90 miles an hour. Look at this.
So? Huh? I'm looking. How much you think it's going to cost to fix that? Brand new. We just picked it up this morning.
You can't put a price tag on law enforcement, Lieutenant.
Don't forget to file a report. Hot dog, you can spot him a mile away.
It was just an accident, Mike. What are you so upset about?
Attitude, Dan, his attitude. He thinks he's going to solve this case all by himself. The rest of us are going to get in his way. He's a real hot dog.
Are you sure it's not because he put a dent in our new car?
Yeah, that too.
Did I do something wrong, officer?
Yes, ma'am.
What did I do?
I see your driver's license, please, ma'am. Take it out, please.
You still haven't told me what I did.
You made an illegal U-turn, ma'am.
I did?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, it's okay where I come from.
Where's that, ma'am?
Arizona. I'm going back to school there in a few days.
You have a California driver's license?
I got it before I went to Arizona.
Yes, ma'am. But you understand and agreed to abide by the laws of the state of California.
You're not going to give me a break, are you?
No, ma'am?
Even if I cried real tears and promised never to do it again?
No, ma'am.
Be careful, you almost smiled.
Let me give you some advice. Don't pay the ticket. Go to court and contest it.
You think I can beat it?
No. But it'll give me a chance to see you again. Would you object?
Well, I guess not.
What if I ask you to dinner?
Well, I don't know anything about you.
Well, I don't know anything about you either. That's why I ask you out, okay?
Okay.
Good. 6 o'clock tonight? Dinner.
Tonight, well,
This where you live?
well, yes, but
Good. See you at 6. Oh, by the way, I don't have a car, just a bike. So skirts are out. Good afternoon.
All the vehicles were reported stolen. That probably goes for the bikes, too.
Well, the armored car was cased to the nail. They picked this street and sandwiched it. The fire scare opened the back, and they escaped by motorcycles. Say, remind me to ask that hot dog if those bikes had any special racks on the back.
Lieutenant? This lady lives over there. During the commotion in the smoke, she saw a couple of bags go over the fence. Man jumped over, put them in a blue van, and took off.
Did you get a good look at the man?
No, he had a helmet on and some kind of a mask. He wasn't very big, but I did get part of his license number.
847.
I didn't get the letters.
Comb the area and see if anyone else saw that van. Thank you very much. Come on, let's put out an APB. We'll punch the central computer when we get back. If there's one common denominator among criminals, they never change a winning game. Now, what sticks out here is fire. They used it to make that heist work. Now, my guess is that if they used fire once before and were successful, they'll try it again. The computer will tell us. Say, what about that armored car driver?
Skull fracture, but he'll make it. The guard was DOA.
For so little. Kill a man, just so he couldn't close the door. Jeannie!
Hi, Dad. Oh, I can't kiss you, and your dinner's on the stove. I'm going out.
Oh, to the opera or to a ball game?
I've got a date.
Oh, you got a date. Okay.
I called you at the office, but you weren't in.
No,
Tough day, huh?
tough enough. What time's your date?
6 o'clock.
Anybody I know?
A guy.
What's his name?
Just somebody I met
When?
this afternoon.
You met him this afternoon? You got a date with him already?
Well, sure.
How'd you meet him?
Well, we kind of ran into each other. Oh, would you get that? I'll be out in a second.
Well, hi there, Lieutenant. What are you doing here?
I live here.
How about that? Mike Stone and Gene Stone. That's quite a coincidence. She ready?
Dad, I'd like you to meet...
Larry Wilson.
We've already met.
Yeah, we sort of ran into each other.
Oh,
Sorry, I didn't have time to change. With all those damage reports I had to fill out, I got behind. But my apartment's just on the way, so I thought we'd stop by and I'll...
You could slip into something a little more comfortable.
Exactly. While Gene waits outside.
outside.
Well, somebody's got to watch the bike. You ready?
Don't forget your dinner.
I won't. It's on the stove.
Good night, Lieutenant.
What was that all about?
I dented his car today.
The new one?
Mm-hmm.
You sure know how to win friends.
Tell me about it.
Funny.
What?
You're not what I expected.
And just what did you expect?
Oh,
Something in the way of a right-wing, ultra-conservative redneck with Gestapo overtones.
It's the uniform.
Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. You've agreed to abide by the laws of the state of California, ma'am. You reminded me of a big blue robot.
Well, then why did you go out with me?
Because you smiled. Robots don't smile.
I'll have to remember that.
Oh, you mean you don't do this all the time? Well, it goes like a well-oiled machine. The smile, the date, the little Italian restaurant.
Not true, and you know it. Besides, you're not the type to go for an easy smile and a cheap line.
Thank you, sir.
I'll tell you something else if you promise you won't tell. It's against regulations to ask a girl out on a date while you're giving her a ticket.
Well, then why did you?
Because you're leaving in 3 days.
Unfortunately, I have to get back to school.
What do you study?
The past,
History?
archaeology. The science of moving dirt around to find out something about the people who moved the dirt before we moved it.
Sounds fascinating.
What it comes down to is digging a hole.
But why do you want to be an archaeologist?
Why do you want to be a cop?
Because you never know when you go to work in the morning what your day is going to be like. What's waiting for you out there. What you're going to find.
That's why I want to be an archaeologist.
Do you ever get used to these steps?
No, but we don't get a lot of salesmen, so they're good for something.
Next time I'll bring an oxygen, a bottle of brandy for a little nightcap.
Ah.
If there'll be a next time.
Dad, really?
I thought I heard something.
Yes, it was me gasping for air. Thank you for a very pleasant evening. I like your hair that way. Good night, Lieutenant.
Good night.
Good night.
I don't believe it. I really don't believe it. You're acting just like a father.
I am a father.
All right, then, a nervous father.
Yes, I'll admit to that. Especially when I saw you climb on the back end of that motorcycle.
Motorcycles are perfectly safe.
I didn't say they aren't. But I'm talking about the hot dog that's driving it. I'm familiar with his work.
You're just upset because he dented your car.
No, I'm upset because he didn't follow procedure. Because he didn't tell anyone he was in hot pursuit. And because he not only endangered his life, but he could have endangered somebody else's. Someday that... Listen to me. Someday that hot dog is going to fly over the high side, and he's going to paint himself on the pavement. And when he does, I don't want him to take you along with him. So you just stay off that motorcycle. And stay away from him.
This has nothing to do with you, or the police department, or procedures. It's between me and him. And don't forget to turn off the porch light before you go to bed.
Car washing, 16th.
Call in the print boys yet?
They're on their way. What the?
Pull over.
You're right, it's him.
Hey, Lieutenant. I knew it was you when I saw the dent in the door.
Can't miss it, can you?
There's something I was going to tell you last night, but the porch light drove it right out of my head.
Okay, let's get to the point.
On that armored car robbery. What are you looking for?
We're working on an MO, fire, arson. We think that operation was so successful that they probably did it before somewhere.
You're looking for a biker.
Well, the fact that they all left on motorcycles, that's only part of the MO.
No, it's more than that. Those guys were good. Pros. The guy I was chasing racked twice, laid it down once, and never even came close to losing it on a jump. He's also wearing a motocross boot.
What?
It's a special biker's boot with a steel toe. He could really pivot on it. He's either a dirt racer or rides motocross. That's what you're looking for.
Thank you. Thank you, Officer Wilson, for taking time off your job and telling us all that.
Well, that's okay. I'm off duty anyway. I was on my way back to the station when I...
Saw the dent.
Could be right.
We can't put out an APB on a biker. We don't have that many policemen in San Francisco. Well, come on, don't just sit there. Let's go.
Yes, sir.
Some guy, I don't know. He wore dark glasses and a hat. He paid cash. We don't look at the man. We look at the truck. See if there's any damage to it, you know? Look at the tires. See if it'll fit through the machine. He said he'd be back in half an hour. That was yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah.
No prints. It's clean, Mike. Really clean.
We do a good job. The people work for me are trained, you know?
Was the man wearing overalls the driver?
Maybe. Yeah, I think so.
We found a grease smudge on the brake pedal. Said the lab might be able to give us an analysis.
Did the lab say how long it would take?
No, but they knew you'd ask.
Come on.
See.
I need air.
Oh, if Dad could only see you.
I'll stick around.
Amazing. Everything fits. Where did you get these?
Out of my closet. Well, things you collect without ever really wanting to.
Oh, I see. You know, this is ridiculous.
Now listen, you can't be a serious biker. Just stay home.
Yes, sir.
That's better. It's still a little early. Do you mind stopping by this place on the way?
No, not at all.
What can I do for you?
Looking for a guy. Thought maybe you might be able to help me.
What's his name?
I forgot. Oh, man, I was loaded and I just forgot. Is it down south in the Channel Islands motocross?
I was down for that one.
Okay, you know the joint on 101 just south of Big Sur coming back that Sunday night?
Don't remind me.
Right. Well, a guy there gave me 20 bucks and I want to pay him back. But I don't have the name. Tall dude. I really can't tell you what he looks like, but I rode with him for a while up the coast till he lost me. Could really lay it down. Even rode street with a steel toe.
That's Don. I'll bet on it.
Could be a million guys.
No, Don. I forget his last name. Hey, ask around. You'll find him. Hey, try Binky's. Okay?
Oh, okay, thanks. I'll do that. You going up to Eugene for the scramble?
Hey, I wouldn't miss it.
See you there.
You're amazing.
I hoped you wouldn't find out.
Hey, Roger, why don't you go sweep out the office, all right?
I don't like you coming here.
Well, there's a guy over at Mella's, and he's asking questions about somebody with a hot shoe.
What do you look like?
Normal, had a girl with him, but I think he's a cop. How are they gonna know anything?
Where's Don?
I don't know. I went over to his place. Landlady said he's been gone a couple of days.
All right, find him. Tell him to crawl in a hole and stay there until we let him out.
Yeah, okay. Now, this guy, you think he's gonna come around here asking questions?
If he's making the rounds, he is.
Why are you doing this? Looking for this Don character, I mean. Is it your job?
Technically, no. But what I do on my own is my business. Hang on.
What is it?
I think there's a robbery going on in that liquor store. Go to that phone booth over there and call the police. Tell them there's a 211 in progress. Officer needs assistance. Can you do that?
Sure. Yes, he's in there already, and they're shooting.
I'm a police officer. Put the gun on the counter and your hands in the air.
Not me! Now you stay where you are and she doesn't get hurt. All right, that's it.
I need a doctor. I gotta go down and file a report because of the shooting. Can you get home all right by yourself?
Sure.
I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do.
Jeannie. Jeannie. Are you all right?
Oh, sure, of course. I'm all right. But listen, they've taken Larry downtown.
He is a jerk. They ought to take him all the way to Siberia. I get a call on my radio. Hey, Mike, your daughter is backing up Larry Wilson in a shootout at a liquor store.
All I did was make one telephone call.
Sure, from a glass booth, right in the line of fire. 211 my foot. Did he tell you to say that?
Now, wait a minute. He went in that store
Without a backup.
He did what he had to do.
Maybe. Maybe, but what he did was very dangerous, and he put you right in the middle of it. Now, look, I want you to give me your word that you will never see him again. Your word. I want you to give me your word.
How'd the review board go?
Larry Wilson was sent back to duty without a reprimand.
Thought it was against regulations to fire when someone's got a hostage.
It was a judgment call. I voted in his favor.
A lot of trouble getting his records. How come?
The more you dislike a person, the tougher it is to be fair. What have you got there?
Computer readout.
That's not bad. 3 previous firebomb robberies. Bank in Seattle, armored car in Los Angeles. And a jewel heist right here in San Francisco.
But still no leads.
You know, if these jobs are done by the same outfit, and it's my guess they are, then we got pros, and pros are ex-cons, and cons have records. Say, let's talk to the jewelry store guy. Maybe he can come up with something. But what about the lab? They gonna make all that grease yet?
Not yet. They say it's exotic. They're working on it.
Exotic? Grease is grease.
Help you? Maybe. Looking for a guy. Name is Don. Where's the steel cap boot?
I don't know any Don. Sorry. But you can put a card on the board in there if you want. A lot of people look at it.
That's a good idea. If I don't find him, I'll do that.
Hello?
This is Marty. Where's Don?
Beats me. I looked everywhere for him. I heard he was down in Morro Bay.
The guy was here asking questions. If he ain't a cop, he's sure close. Look, go to Morro Bay. Find Don before somebody else does.
Yeah, okay.
Don't mess around, Buck. I've been at this a long time. There's heat out there. I can feel it.
There were 17, just like this one. Gone in less than 90 seconds. Traumatic. You know, the jewel case was handcuffed to my wrist. You know, at first I thought, oh, God, they got to cut off my arm. But one of them had cutters. Severed the chain, only cut me right here, which certainly was a consolation, believe me. I still have dreams.
Then they ran across the street and jumped on motorcycles.
Yes, and that was that. I just sat on the curb and waited until the ambulance came.
You say they wore headgear and masks?
Correct. I had no way of identifying them.
What about clothes?
Sort of coveralls, nothing special. Oh, one of them was very dirty, greasy.
Shoes. What about shoes?
I don't remember.
Sneakers, moccasins, boots.
Boots. Yes. Funny, I did see when they were cutting the chain, I looked down. And there beyond my own arm was one boot. You know, at first I thought, oh, the poor man must be a cripple. He certainly ran well enough when he crossed the street. Yes. Strange boots with steel cups over the toes.
The biker's boot.
Your hot dog put his finger on it.
You're on time.
Well, don't look so surprised.
Thank you. How come you didn't want me to pick you up at your house?
It's chauvinistic. A man having to pick up a woman at her door is an archaic ritual. Like 50 years ago, a woman spending an evening alone with a man in his apartment would have been considered a fallen woman.
Just goes to show you how little things have changed in the last 50 years. You know what I think?
What?
I think it's because you didn't want your father to know that you were going out with me.
Well, if you're going to start reading my mind, I better leave right now.
I'm burning the water. Mm-hmm.
Larry, what's a hot dog?
A hot dog. That's something you eat at a baseball game, isn't it?
In police terminology.
A hot dog is someone who goes straight ahead, full speed. Doesn't look left, doesn't look right, doesn't look back. He just goes.
What's wrong with that?
Well, You might say that he doesn't always go by the book.
My dad doesn't want me to see you anymore.
Why is that? Because I'm a hot dog?
The classic father-daughter confrontation. But he can see this is the first time I've ever been serious about it. So now you know why all us stones have such tiny feet. So they can fit easily into our mouths.
Cheers.
Do you go to law school?
Uh-huh. Nights. I'm halfway through.
Well, you didn't say anything.
When I pass the bar, believe me, I'll tell the world.
Well, then what? Private practice?
No. Law enforcement all the way. I hope to end up behind the desk in the DA's office.
That's an ambitious dream.
No, not a dream. Dreams are things you never achieve.
Do you have any of those?
I'd like to have the fastest bike in the world and race on the Isle of Man.
Well, you could do that. That's not a dream.
And I win the race?
Okay, that's a dream. Anything else?
You.
What about me?
I think you're one of my dreams.
I think you're wrong.
Okay, I'll be right down.
Who was it?
Gotta stop drinking so much coffee. It makes you nervous. How about trying some nice, fresh carrot juice?
Oh, no. I just went to bed late last night.
Something wrong?
Mm-mm. I was hooked on a late-night movie. Murder mystery. Who's on the phone?
The lab. They finished with the grease. I'll go get the report. Hi, Jeannie.
Hi, Dan. You busy?
No. Come on in.
I was in the neighborhood, and I thought I might be able to take you to lunch.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe tomorrow.
Well, I go back to school tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Time sure flies, doesn't it? How about dinner tonight? Just you and me. I know a quiet little place.
I can't, Mike. I have a date.
Okay. You win. Where would you like to have lunch?
You know, sooner or later, we're going to have to talk about him.
Now, you know how I feel about him.
Yeah, but you don't know how I feel. Dad, you don't even know him.
Yes, I do. Don't you think I checked? I asked at least a half a dozen people around here, and he is wrong for you.
Why?
Do you have any idea how many Larry Wilsons I've seen in my 24 years on the force? 50, maybe 100. And do you know how many are left? Alive in one piece? Maybe a handful.
Well, I think he's better than you give him credit for.
Okay, let's say that you're right. Let's say that he lives and he stays on the force. What then? Have you really thought about that? Married to a man who is never home when you need him. And your friends would be policemen and their wives because, well, the other people in the world, they're just a little nervous around us. And if you heard a car backfire or you heard something on the radio, your heart would stop a beat because you think it was him. You think he's lying there in an alley somewhere. And when he does come home, tired and angry and crazy because he had to help pull out the remains of 3 teenage kids from what was left of their father's car. Do you know what happens to the guts of a man who spends every day of his life sweeping up the world? Do you want to live like that?
My mother did. Dad, I understand what you're saying. And I know you have my best interests at heart. But if Larry Wilson asks me to marry him, I'm going to.
Mike, are you available?
Yeah, what have you got?
I have the grease report. It's a special blend, which is what took them so long. It's made in Italy for racing motorcycles. Only 3 bike shops in San Francisco carry it.
Bikers?
Like the man said.
Let's go. Come on! Hey, fella. Can we talk to you for a minute? You sell,
Fantoni.
Fantoni, that special racing grease?
How many cans you want?
We just want a list of all the names of the people who bought it.
You gotta be kidding.
You don't have it, right?
No, I do. That's the funny part. Anything else in the shop, receipts, no records, nothing. But that stuff, well, the guys that use it are pros. They're into it, you know? So I made a mailing list and I got the receipts.
Can we have these? I'll make copies and see you get them back.
I should say no.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I could probably put together a list for you. Only about 10 people bought that stuff. Shouldn't be too hard.
We'd appreciate it. We'll drop back this afternoon.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
What is that? 2 down and 1 to go.
Boy 111, we have a 718, the corner of Allen and McKay.
4 Boy 111, unable, M107.
Fantoni, that special racing grease. It's made in Italy.
Yeah, we have it. I'm pretty sure.
Sell a lot of it?
I guess so.
Well, listen, we want a list of all the people who bought that product. Can you give us that list?
We don't have any lists. You better come back later.
Why?
The boss will be here.
Okay, fine. Thanks. We'll be back later.
Thank you.
Oh, gee, Marty, the police just came. I didn't know you were here.
No, that's all right. You go home now and I'll close up.
For the rest of the day?
Yeah, all day.
Oh, thanks, Marty.
Okay.
I think we ought to check out the boss.
Yeah. Everybody else had a list to show us. You know, I don't think that fellow knows anything. Let's call for a stakeout. Inspectors 8-1 to headquarters.
Say, did you see that? A biker's boot with a steel toe.
Beat it! Cops! Come on!
Freeze!
Get the sidewalk. Get the feet back.
Okay, let's go. Move! Move it! Larry? Are you all right? Larry, can you hear me? Now, I know you're a good shot, but please, don't overdo it.
Hi.
About our tennis game.
You had us going. You really did.
Who's us?
Dad's here, too. He's running around out there, telling everybody you're 6 different kinds of a fool. But I think he's kind of proud of you.
He's right, you know.
You're 6 different kinds of a fool?
I am a hot dog. I only know how to handle things one way. Straight ahead and full speed.
That can get you killed, Larry. I don't think I could take it. Guess I'm not much for hospitals.
Rough, huh? Been having second thoughts?
Let's just say I've been thinking. Well, I think I like it best when you graduate from law school and get a job behind a nice, safe desk.
I've been having the same thoughts.
Am I a coward?
No. You're a real hot dog. Straight ahead and full speed.
Larry,
Don't look back.
Are you sure you don't want me to drive you?
No, I'll be all right.
Jean. Jeannie. Now, you know I've always wanted you to have the best of everything. I really have. And, well, I was wrong. I have no right to tell you who to fall in love with and who not to fall in love with. I just didn't want to see you get hurt. I've always wanted to see you happy.
Dad. Thanks. Larry and I have already decided not to see each other for a while. It had nothing to do with you, okay?
Why couldn't she have told me that before I made my little speech?
Would have been too easy.
Just like her mother. Always has to be right.
Yeah, she's sure not like her father.
The first time Inspector Mike Stone noticed the hot dog stand on Powell Street, it was raining in that thin, persistent San Francisco way that never quite commits to a storm but soaks you anyway. the kind of rain that makes the city smell like wet asphalt, sour coffee, and old regret, and Stone, collar up, badge hidden beneath his coat, stood watching a man in a paper hat turn sausages on a griddle as if nothing else in the world mattered, as if the siren screaming somewhere downhill belonged to another city entirely. And Stone thought, not for the first time, that San Francisco survived on denial as much as fog, because people here could eat, laugh, flirt, and complain about mustard prices while someone was being stabbed 3 blocks away. And that thought followed him into the Hall of Justice, where Lieutenant Dan McCormick was already pacing, his voice echoing down the corridor before Stone even saw him, talking about a body found near the cable car turnaround, male, late 20s, stabbed twice, wallet intact. No witnesses except a drunk who claimed the killer smelled like onions, which Stone filed away without comment, because in this city, even the nonsense sometimes turned out to be true. And they drove out together, McCormick behind the wheel, Stone staring through the windshield at storefronts blurring into one another, Ticarius next to pawn shops next to churches advertising redemption in 3 languages, and McCormick, older, heavier, sharper in a way that came from years of compromise rather than idealism, said nothing for several blocks before muttering that this city eats its young and feeds the scraps to men like them, which Stone didn't answer, because he wasn't sure whether it was cynicism or confession. And when they arrived at the scene, the rain had washed the blood into pink rivers along the curb, the victim lying awkwardly near a newspaper box, eyes open, mouth half-curled as if trying to speak one last complaint, and Stone knelt, noticing the smell immediately, grease and onions clinging faintly to the man's jacket, the kind of smell you picked up leaning too close to a street vendor. And that's when the hot dog stand came back to him, absurd and banal and suddenly important, because violence in San Francisco rarely announced itself loudly. It seeped in sideways through ordinary places, and McCormick barked orders while Stone drifted mentally, reconstructing a possible timeline where a man buys a hot dog, argues over change, follows or is followed. Words get sharper. A knife comes out not from passion but irritation, and the city swallows another name without pause. And later, back at the precinct, as phones rang and typewriters clacked, Stone dug into the victim's background. A transplant from Ohio, recent job at a shipping office, no record, no known enemies, a nobody in a city famous for erasing nobodies, and McCormick, lighting a cigarette he wasn't supposed to smoke indoors anymore, told Stone that the mayor wanted results fast because tourists were complaining, as if murders were an inconvenience like broken streetlights. And Stone nodded, already drifting back to Powell Street, to the vendor's steady hands, to the idea that routine was the real camouflage of crime. And when he went home that night, he didn't sleep much. Dreams crowded with faceless men dripping mustard onto sidewalks that turned red beneath their feet. And the next morning he skipped breakfast and went straight back to the hot dog stand, now glowing cheerfully in the weak daylight, the vendor whistling tunelessly, and Stone ordered one with onions, watching carefully as the man worked, noticing a faint scar along his thumb, noticing the way his eyes flicked up at the badge just a fraction too late. And when Stone casually mentioned the stabbing, the vendor's whistle faltered, just for a breath, just long enough for Stone to know he was standing at the edge of something small but dangerous, the kind of thing that didn't look like much until you followed it far enough to realize it connected to half the city. And Stone paid, stepped away, took one bite, and thought grimly that the hot dog tasted fine, which somehow made everything worse. Stone didn't arrest the vendor that morning because experience had taught him that men who killed over small things rarely looked like killers at first glance. They looked like men holding on to routine as if routine were a life raft. And instead, he walked 3 blocks, eating slowly, letting the grease soak through the paper and into his fingers, replaying the vendor's momentary hesitation. The way fear in this city never screamed, but always whispered. And later, back at the precinct, he found McCormick already buried under paperwork, jaw clenched, mood sour, complaining about a city councilman screaming about crime statistics while quietly asking that certain neighborhoods be ignored. And Stone listened with half an ear, his other half focused on the smell that still clung to his coat, onions and steam and rain, until he finally asked McCormick what he knew about street vendors in the Powell corridor. And McCormick snorted, saying they were ghosts, licensed, unlicensed, tolerated, harassed, occasionally shaken down by patrolmen who needed coffee money, occasionally used as eyes and ears by bigger operators who liked to know who passed through which block and when, and Stone nodded, because the case was already unfolding not as a single act of violence, but as a pattern, and patterns were what San Francisco hid best behind its postcards and fog. And when Stone pulled the victim's file again, he noticed a receipt folded inside the jacket inventory list, a hot dog and soda, time-stamped 30 minutes before death, and it felt less like a clue than an accusation, the city daring him to connect it preferred unconnected, and that afternoon, he walked the route from the stand to the murder site, counting steps, timing traffic lights, watching faces, realizing how easy it would be for two men to walk side by side for several minutes without anyone noticing tension rising between them, how a conversation could sour quietly, how a knife could flash once and be gone before anyone decided to look, and when he finally returned to the stand, the vendor was arguing with a health inspector, voice raised, hands gesturing, and Stone waited until the official left before approaching again, not flashing his badge this time, just standing close enough for the man to smell authority whether he wanted to or not, and he talked about Ohio, about men who came west thinking the city would forgive them their pasts, about how San Francisco had a way of smiling while it strangled you. And the vendor listened, sweating despite the cool air, nodding too often, agreeing too quickly, until Stone said quietly that the dead man had eaten here last, and the vendor's face collapsed into something that wasn't guilt exactly but exhaustion, the look of someone who had been waiting for a question he hoped would never be asked, and he said he didn't stab anyone, that he just talked, that the kid complained about the price, about the onions, about everything, that he followed him for half a block yelling insults in a voice too loud for such a small grievance, that another man joined them, someone Stone hadn't imagined yet, someone who listened more than he spoke, someone who smelled like onions because he liked to stand close to the grill, and Stone felt the case widen in his hands, slipping out of neat boundaries, turning into something communal, shared, and therefore harder to pin down. And when Stone finally left the stand again, the city felt heavier, as if every ordinary interaction carried the potential for sudden violence, and that night he told McCormick they weren't looking for a killer, they were looking for a chain, and McCormick, staring at the city lights through his office window, said chains were harder to break because everyone only held one link, and Stone went home thinking about that, thinking about how many links a city like San Francisco could hide before it decided to show you the whole length. By the third day, the case had stopped feeling like a homicide and started feeling like a weather pattern, something that moved invisibly through the city, touching lives lightly until it suddenly didn't. And Stone felt it everywhere, in the way patrolmen avoided eye contact when he asked about Powell Street, in the way vendors suddenly remembered appointments when he lingered too long, in the way McCormick's patience thinned as pressure thickened from above because the department didn't like cases without clean villains, and San Francisco specialized in messy ones. And when Stone finally tracked down the second man the vendor had described, it wasn't through legwork so much as inevitability, because men who hovered around street corners long enough eventually believed those corners belonged to them, and this one leaned against a lamppost near Market Street selling nothing, watching everything, his jacket stained with grease that had soaked too deep to wash out, his hands scarred in the casual, permanent way of men who handled knives not for killing but for work, and Stone approached without ceremony, knowing intimidation was useless against men who lived publicly invisible lives, and he talked instead about hot dogs, about how the best ones came from places you never saw on postcards, about how food tasted better when eaten standing up because you couldn't relax enough to think, and the man laughed at that, a quick bark of amusement that betrayed relief at being spoken to like a person, and he admitted he'd seen the argument, that he'd followed out of curiosity, that he'd thought maybe the kid deserved a scare for the way he talked to people like they were dirt under his shoes, and Stone listened carefully, hearing not confession but rationalization, the story men told themselves when they participated without finishing the act, and the man said the knife wasn't his, that it flashed once and vanished, that the kid fell hard and fast, more surprised than hurt at first, and Stone believed him in the way cops believe things provisionally, because truth in this city came layered, and when Stone pressed for a description of the third man, the answers blurred, tall maybe, quiet definitely, someone who blended so well into the street that remembering him felt like remembering fog, and that frightened Stone more than lies would have, because anonymity was San Francisco's sharpest weapon, and later, back at the precinct, McCormick warned him off chasing ghosts, reminding him they already had a witness, already had a suspect who could be leaned on hard enough to crack, and Stone nodded while knowing he wouldn't stop, because arresting the wrong man was just another way of letting the city win, and that night he walked alone through neighborhoods tourists never photographed, watching people eat, argue, flirt, live, all of them one irritation away from violence. And he realized the case wasn't about a hot dog or a knife or even a victim. It was about proximity, about how close strangers stood to one another in a crowded city until lines blurred and responsibility dissolved. And when Stone finally returned home, he wrote notes he wouldn't file yet, names without faces, patterns without proof, and he slept poorly again, dreaming of streets that folded in on themselves, vendors selling nothing but excuses, and a man with no face, standing just close enough to smell onions on Stone's breath. Stone began to understand that the third man existed less as a person and more as a function, a role the city assigned to whoever happened to fit it that day, and that realization made the investigation feel both urgent and hopeless, because you could arrest a body but you couldn't handcuff an idea, and McCormick, sensing Stone drifting toward abstraction, pushed him harder, insisting on names, insisting on closure, insisting on something he could hand upstairs before the phones started ringing again, and so Stone followed the trail of small permissions that allowed violence to happen, starting with a bar near Union Square where vendors drank after closing, a place that smelled like stale beer and scorched onions, where men spoke in half-sentences and watched the door, even while laughing, and there Stone learned that the victim had been a regular nuisance, loud, entitled, the kind of man who treated working people like props in his private frustration, and Stone felt the dangerous sympathy creeping in, the temptation to understand too much, and he fought it by focusing on mechanics instead of emotions, on who stood where, who spoke when, who touched what, and a bartender mentioned a quiet guy known only as Lou, not because it was his name, but because it wasn't someone who drifted from job to job, stand to stand, always close enough to hear but never close enough to blame, and Stone felt the case tighten slightly, the way a knot does when you finally pull the right end. And he spent the next day tracing Lou through payroll records that barely existed, through favors owed and forgotten, through a city that remembered faces better than names, until he finally found him sweeping outside a closed theater, broom moving rhythmically, eyes down, posture relaxed in the way of men who learned early how to look harmless, and Stone watched him for a long moment before speaking, noting the faint grease stains on his cuffs, the way he wiped his hands on his pants without realizing it, and when Stone asked about Powell Street, Lou didn't deny being there. He denied relevance, saying things happened every day, saying men argued, saying knives came out sometimes without warning, and Stone heard the defense of someone who had decided long ago that responsibility was optional if you never acknowledged it, and when Stone asked directly whether Lou had held the knife, Lou smiled thinly and said holding and using weren't the same thing, and Stone felt a chill, because the city taught its worst lessons casually, embedding them in jokes and half-truths, and as Stone walked away he knew he still didn't have enough. Not for an arrest, not for a clean ending, only enough to know that violence here was collaborative, that no one acted alone even when only one man stabbed. And that night he sat with McCormick going over notes neither of them wanted to read aloud, and McCormick finally admitted that even if they made an arrest the city would keep going, keep feeding on proximity and denial, and Stone said quietly that maybe the job wasn't to fix the city, but to interrupt it occasionally, and McCormick nodded, older eyes tired but not broken, and outside the window San Francisco glowed, beautiful and indifferent, waiting for the next small irritation to turn fatal. The arrest came quietly, the way most important things did in San Francisco, without sirens or crowds or the satisfaction Stone had imagined when he first smelled onions on a dead man's jacket, because Lou didn't run and didn't argue and didn't confess in any useful way. He simply went still when Stone told him he was coming in, as if being caught was just another shift ending. And at the station, he answered questions with a precision that felt rehearsed, admitting presence, but denying intent, acknowledging the knife without claiming ownership, framing the act as something that happened through him rather than because of him, and Stone listened, aware that this was the city's favorite alibi, the idea that forces moved people instead of the other way around, and McCormick pushed harder, voice sharp, demanding names, demanding motive, demanding something solid enough to survive a courtroom. And Lou eventually said the thing Stone had been circling for days, that nobody planned it, that the kid kept talking, that everyone felt insulted, that someone had to shut him up, and Stone felt the weight of that plural pronoun, the way it spread responsibility so thin it almost disappeared, and when Lou was booked and processed, the room felt anticlimactic, fluorescent lights buzzing, phones ringing, the machinery of justice grinding forward without enthusiasm, and later, walking back past Powell Street, Stone stopped again at the hot dog stand, now run by a different man, the original. Vendor gone, relocated or disappeared or simply erased, and Stone ordered nothing, just stood watching sausages turn on the grill, listening to tourists laugh, listening to traffic, and realizing that even with an arrest the case would never really close because the victim would stay dead. Lou would become a headline for a day, and the city would continue teaching people how to stand close without caring, how to let irritation substitute for judgment, and that night Stone told McCormick he wasn't sure they'd stopped anything at all, only delayed it, and McCormick, pouring cheap whiskey into paper cups, said delays were sometimes the best you could do, and Stone went home thinking about that, about how policing in San Francisco felt less like enforcement and more like negotiation with a living organism that didn't care about rules, and he dreamed again of fog and food carts and faceless men. But this time he woke with the uneasy sense that the city had been watching him too, learning how far it could push before he pushed back. After Lou was charged, the city behaved exactly as Stone expected it would, which was to forget almost immediately, newspapers reducing the story to a column inch wedged between a zoning dispute and a feature about sourdough, television summarizing weeks of proximity and resentment into a 10-second voiceover, and Stone felt an unfamiliar irritation not at the media but at how easily the city shrugged, because he knew forgetting wasn't innocence, it was practice, and in the days that followed he noticed how often people mentioned the case only to reassure themselves that it was finished, that a name had been assigned and therefore the danger neutralized, and McCormick leaned into that relief, pushing paperwork through, smoothing edges, reminding Stone that convictions required focus, not philosophy. But Stone couldn't shake the sense that Lou had been less the author of the violence than its punctuation mark, a period slapped onto a sentence written collectively by 100 small daily cruelties, and that sense sharpened when the trial preparation began and witnesses softened, memories blurred, motives simplified, because complexity was inconvenient and the city preferred stories with clean lines. And one afternoon Stone walked Powell Street again, deliberately at the same hour as the murder, watching the same flow of people repeat itself with small variations, the same impatience, the same entitlement, the same vulnerability masked as confidence, and he realized how little had changed, how quickly the vacuum left by one vendor was filled by another, how easily routine healed over trauma without ever addressing it. And when Stone spoke to a patrolman assigned to the area, the man shrugged and said things were quieter now, which Stone understood as coincidence framed as cause. And later, sitting alone in a diner far from downtown, Stone wrote notes he would never submit, reflections about how cities taught men what they could get away with by what they tolerated. And he wondered how many times he himself had stood close enough to injustice to smell it without intervening, and that thought unsettled him more than Lou's quiet acceptance of arrest, because it suggested complicity wasn't an exception but a spectrum. And when McCormick called that evening to say the district attorney was pleased, Stone said nothing, staring out at the fog-swallowing streetlights one by one, thinking about how satisfaction in this job often meant relief rather than pride, and he fell asleep on the couch, still dressed, dreaming not of violence this time but of silence, entire blocks of people choosing not to speak until the city itself leaned in too close. The first crack in the case came not from the streets but from inside the building, which Stone should have expected because institutions like cities protected themselves before they protected truth, and it began with a quiet memo suggesting that Lou's public defender intended to argue diminished responsibility, not insanity exactly but environment, the claim that proximity, pressure, and collective hostility had shaped the act beyond individual control, and Stone read it twice, feeling in Uneasy recognition because it echoed his own unfiled notes too closely, and McCormick dismissed it as legal theater, reminding him that juries liked villains more than systems. But Stone couldn't ignore the possibility that the defense might succeed precisely because it was honest in a way the prosecution wouldn't be allowed to be, and that honesty threatened the department's narrative. Because if violence was environmental, then policing was only ever reactive, and Stone found himself pulled into meetings he hadn't been part of before, discussions about messaging, about framing, about how much nuance could be risked without eroding authority, and he watched men he respected shave truth into manageable shapes, not out of malice but habit, and that disturbed him more than outright corruption would have. And when he walked Powell Street again, he noticed the patrol cars lingering longer than necessary, a visible reassurance meant to substitute for understanding, and vendors adjusting behavior, performing compliance rather than feeling safety, and Stone realized the city was staging itself for the courtroom, rehearsing a version of reality it hoped would hold. And that night he confronted McCormick gently, asking whether they were still telling the truth, or just the most useful version of it. And McCormick, older and wearier than Stone had ever seen him, said usefulness was what kept the lights on. And Stone didn't argue because he understood that too well, but he felt something shift. A line crossed quietly, and as the trial approached, he wondered whether justice in San Francisco was less about resolution than containment, less about accountability than preventing discomfort from spreading, and he thought again of the hot dog stand, of how quickly it had returned under new management, identical but not the same, and he wondered how many replacements the city could absorb before something essential changed, or whether replacement itself was the change. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and recycled air, a neutral scent meant to erase emotion, and Stone sat behind the prosecution table feeling strangely peripheral to a case he had built, watching lawyers transform lived complexity into theatrical clarity, and as witnesses testified, he recognized the city performing itself. Vendors suddenly articulate about fear they had never reported, bystanders suddenly confident about details they had previously blurred, everyone offering a piece shaped to fit the story they sensed the room preferred, and when Stone took the stand, he answered carefully, sticking to observable facts, resisting the urge to explain patterns he couldn't prove, because the law rewarded certainty and punished insight, and the defense leaned heavily on environment, painting Powell Street as a pressure cooker, a narrow corridor of irritation and noise and forced intimacy, and Stone saw jurors nod, recognizing their own experiences compressed into narrative, and that frightened him more than hostility would have, because it meant the argument was working, and outside the courthouse reporters framed the trial as a referendum on urban decay, asking whether San Francisco was becoming ungovernable, as if cities were machines you could tune rather than organisms that adapted and resisted, and McCormick coached Stone on responses, urging him to stay on message, to emphasize individual choice, and Stone complied publicly, while privately noting how thin that line felt in practice, and during a recess, he walked past a hot dog cart parked illegally near the steps, the vendor selling briskly to jurors and reporters alike, and Stone was struck by the absurd continuity of it, how the symbol at the heart of the case had already been absorbed back into daily life, stripped of meaning, and when the verdict finally came back guilty, but reduced, a compromise dressed up as justice, the room exhaled in relief, because no one liked extreme outcomes, and Stone felt only a muted resignation, aware that the city had once again negotiated with itself and declared the result acceptable, and that night he and McCormick drank without celebrating, both men understanding that the case would close on paper while remaining open in reality, looping back into the city's rhythms the way all unresolved tensions eventually did. In the weeks after the verdict, Stone found himself noticing absence more than presence, the missing weight of the case in his daily routine, the way conversations drifted away from Powell Street as if it had been a temporary weather event rather than a fracture, and he realized how much of his sense of purpose had been tied to motion, to the act of pushing against something resistant. And without that resistance, his days felt oddly unmoored, and he watched McCormick slide comfortably back into the familiar grind, already half invested in the next problem, and Stone envied that adaptability, even as he suspected it was a form of erosion, and one evening he ran into the hot dog vendor's replacement at a diner, the man recognizing Stone from nowhere specific, just the way authority lingered in posture, and they talked briefly about business, about permits, about how crowds behaved. And the vendor mentioned offhandedly that arguments happen less now, not because people were kinder, but because they were watched more closely. And Stone thought about surveillance masquerading as safety, about calm enforced rather than earned, and later, walking home, he replayed moments from the case that still felt unfinished, especially the ease with which responsibility had been redistributed until it barely touched anyone, and he wondered how many versions of himself existed in the city. How many times he had chosen convenience over confrontation, and that night he dreamed of the victim. Again, but this time the man wasn't bleeding or angry, just standing at the hot dog stand waiting to be served, looking over his shoulder as if expecting someone to tell him when it was safe to turn around. And Stone woke with the uncomfortable realization that safety in San Francisco was always conditional, always temporary, a negotiation renewed daily. And he understood that what the case had taken from him wasn't faith in justice, but faith in endings, because nothing here ever truly ended. It only receded, waiting for the right combination of proximity and impatience to surface again. Stone began to suspect that the case had altered him in ways too subtle for reports or conversations, manifesting instead in small hesitations, in the extra second he took before stepping into an argument, in the way he now watched crowds not as potential threats, but as chemical mixtures waiting for the wrong catalyst, and this awareness followed him everywhere, into diners, onto buses, into the quiet of his apartment where the city's noise filtered through walls like a distant conscience. And he found himself revisiting old cases mentally, reclassifying them not by outcome but by environment, noticing how often violence had been incubated rather than ignited, and this shift unsettled him because it suggested that his career had been less about stopping crimes than about arriving after conditions had already matured. And when McCormick asked him to take lead on a new assault case near Chinatown, Stone hesitated, not out of fear but out of fatigue, sensing the familiar geometry of proximity and grievance already forming, and McCormick noticed, raising an eyebrow, asking when Stone had become philosophical, and Stone shrugged, unwilling to articulate the feeling that he was chasing symptoms rather than disease. And that evening, instead of going home, he walked aimlessly through neighborhoods stitched together by habit more than planning, watching how people negotiated space, how they apologized or didn't, how irritation flickered and faded or lingered, and he realized that the city's real violence lay not in knives but in permissions, in what people allowed themselves to feel without consequence. And standing near a late-night hot dog cart, he listened to a couple argue softly over nothing, the vendor pretending not to hear, everyone maintaining the delicate fiction that strangers weren't connected, and Stone felt an urge to intervene that surprised him, not as a cop but as a participant. And he stepped away instead, understanding that intervention without authority was another kind of risk. And as he finally headed home, he accepted that the case hadn't given him answers so much as a lens, one that made San Francisco sharper, harsher, and impossible to look away from, and he wondered whether that clarity would make him better at his job or eventually drive him out of it. The moment Stone realized the case was truly over came without ceremony, arriving instead as a mild inconvenience, a call from records asking whether an old box could be archived or destroyed, and as he stared at the file number, he felt an unexpected resistance, not to letting go of the paperwork, but to accepting that the city had already absorbed what it needed from the incident and moved on. And he authorized the archive while knowing the act was symbolic at best, because memory in San Francisco was never stored where you could label it, and afterward, he found himself drawn again to Powell Street one last time, standing across from the hot dog stand now so normalized it barely registered, watching people eat without thinking, and he wondered how many invisible negotiations had to succeed every minute for that ordinariness to hold, how many impulses had to be swallowed, how many insults ignored, and the thought made civility feel fragile rather than comforting. And later that day, McCormick announced his intention to retire within the year, delivering the news casually as if it were just another schedule adjustment, and Stone felt a surprising pang at the idea of the city, without McCormick's steady cynicism anchoring it, and they talked briefly about replacements, about how leadership styles changed but structures didn't, and McCormick said something that stayed with Stone, that cities outlast philosophies but wear down people, and Stone took that home with him, letting it settle among the other quiet realizations the case had deposited. And that night he dreamed not of crime, but of routine, of endless cues, of small transactions repeated until meaning drained away. And when he woke, he understood that the true cost of the case wasn't emotional exhaustion, but a new awareness of how easily violence could be disguised as normalcy, and that awareness felt like a burden he couldn't set down, only carry more carefully. On a morning that looked like any other, fog lifting just enough to promise clarity it wouldn't deliver, Stone walked Powell Street without intention, no case file in his pocket, no questions prepared, only the accumulated weight of months pressing lightly against his awareness. And he noticed how the city had already rewritten the space, how memory here was architectural rather than emotional, reshaped by what remained standing rather than what had fallen. And he stopped at the hot dog stand. Not because it mattered anymore, but because it didn't, because it had returned to being what it always pretended to be, an ordinary place where hunger met convenience. And he ordered one, watching the vendor work with practiced indifference, noticing the same motions repeated by a different set of hands. And when Stone ate, he found himself paying attention not to the taste, but to the people around him, to the distances they kept or closed, to the small choices that accumulated into atmosphere. And he understood then that what he had learned from the case wasn't how violence began or ended, but how it waited, patient and unremarkable, for permission, and that policing in San Francisco would never be about eliminating that waiting, but about shortening it, interrupting it, sometimes only by minutes or inches. And that realization no longer felt like failure, but like definition, a clearer understanding of the boundaries of his role. And as he finished eating and threw the wrapper away, he felt something like acceptance settle in. Not satisfaction, not peace, but a steady readiness. And when his phone rang with news of another minor incident across town, he answered without hesitation, stepping back into motion, aware that the city would continue testing its limits through ordinary interactions, and that his job was not to solve San Francisco, but to stay present within it, alert to the moment when irritation tipped into harm. And as he walked away, the hot dog stand disappeared behind him into the flow of the street, indistinguishable again, and the city breathed on, complicated, crowded, and unfinished.